Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next The Dragon Prince video. This is going to be my review for the new Dragon Prince graphic novel, Puzzle House. So this is graphic novel number 3. Number 1 is Through the Moon, number 2 is Blood Moon Huntress, both of which I would recommend reading. I suppose especially after Season 5, Blood Moon Huntress is particularly of kind of note because, of course, the Blood Moon Huntress is in Season 5. Through the Moon is important as well because it's like material set in the time skip and give context for Season 4. And then we get to the new comic, Puzzle House, which, as you can see here, features a young Claudia, young Soren. So it's a bit of a flashback story, similar to Blood Moon Huntress, which was Rayla when she was younger, but also featured some other stuff. The kind of, in a way, kind of gimmick going on here is that there's a little bit of a mystery surrounding Viren's mentor, Kapir, whatever you want to say his name. He's referenced kind of throughout this, even though he's not around in this, because if you saw Season 5, you know the fate of Kapir. He also has been trapped by Viren in one of those coins by dark magic. So that information from Season 5 is actually one of the kind of that answers one of the kind of mysteries going along throughout this book, which is, why has Kapir suddenly disappeared? Why isn't he around anymore? And it's not resolved in this book. So I don't know, it's a weird one about the timing of this, where like they specifically made sure like the official release date is August 1st, that this would release after Season 5. Even the separate release dates, of course, they released it early, the planned release date. Either way, this book was coming out afterwards. My copy just happened to arrive early. So it's interesting in that sense. I do kind of end up coming out of this book questioning a little bit, what specifically is the aim or intent of this being your third. Only 3 graphic novels. Like, it's not like we have tons of comics, extra material for the Dragon Prince, especially when it comes to the comic format. We get a lot of those extra stories on the website, but in terms of comics, this is only the 3rd one, and the other ones feel somewhat important, like Rayla backstory with Runan and Athari. The first one, of course, being kind of time skip material ahead of Season 4, which was kind of interesting just by itself. Just the important significance of where it was set and when it came out. This, I see some connections, but it all feels a little bit subtle for how long the book is. Like, it's a 120 something page comic, so like it's quite a lengthy kind of original graphic novel here, especially considering the amount of content there really is here in terms of like what the character arc is, what the plot of this book is. I really come out of it feeling like there's a lot of page count that isn't maybe used particularly well and could have done with some more reveals. Based on the way they've sort of utilized other comics, I have to assume a couple of elements from this are probably going to come up again in like Season 6, maybe Season 7, when it comes to Claudia. Maybe when they finally get around to maybe fully revealing the truth about some of these incidents and specifics, this book will be referenced when it comes to that. So it's one of those ones where, like, if you're a big Dragon Prince fan, like, absolutely get it. It's not that, like, my critiques of it are so strong that I just feel the book is kind of, like, bad or it's not kind of worth getting. It's just, I think compared to the other ones where I felt like the page count was a little bit, like, better used for the length of the book, this one certainly feels like a lot of it is just sort of like, and here's 10-15 pages of them walking through the puzzle house with some rather basic puzzle. I didn't find the puzzles throughout the puzzle house to be particularly interesting, so it's all a little bit like, okay, come on, I appreciate the Soren and Claudia interaction when they're young, but again, it's one of those situations where it feels like you have to wait every 10 to 15 pages before like the characters stop, and then they have a more notable character interaction relating to the more emotional arc of the book, which is Claudia and, in a way, how she feels, how she deals with her feelings surrounding kind of the people she's close to going missing, leaving, and how that relates in a way to current Claudia, who's obviously on this darker path, effectively trying to stop herself from losing people close to her. That is interesting when you get those moments. But like I said, it's a little bit spread out across a rather large book. That's my kind of, I would say, my kind of general non-spoiler review. Like I'm interested to see how people interpret some of the more subtle reveals relating to some of these kind of past incidents. But let's get into the details here. So, I'll do my best to sort of just kind of go through the book, sort of like kind of page by page, scene by scene here. So yeah, we open up with Claudia trying to do some dark magic, but it ends up just resulting in her creating like a bit of a mess. As you can see kind of here, she just kind of explodes some stuff here. This is a spell she's working on to basically turn something that is solid into something that is kind of soft, effectively. This comes back later on where she gets the spell wrong here, but she'll get it right later on in the book. At this point, she is brought, she has to go to her father, who is actually going to see the king. But interestingly, it is King Atticus, not King Harrow. So this is, I guess, Harrow's father, who I don't really remember ever hearing about this before. Maybe there's some like Tales of Xadia lore thing that like reveals this, but this was kind of new to me, knowing the name of the previous king. So yeah, that's what's kind of going on here. And pretty quickly, like, yeah, Atticus turns his attention to Claudia, and kind of a little bit of an issue where like Viren and the advisor guy that's there are kind of making a big deal about Claudia keeps using dark magic, and the spells keep making an absolute mess of all these locations. And their view is initially to be like, stop using dark magic, like completely almost. Like they're taking a very strict view on this. But Atticus is like, okay, like we need to address this, but hey, relax. You come up here, we're talking to you. You sit on the throne, Claudia. And so Claudia actually gets to sit on the throne here. And you can see that Atticus has a very good kind of rapport here with Claudia. They seem to get on quite well. And he manages to very just nicely kind of more convince her that, hey, you're still allowed to use your magic. Just do it in the right place at the right time. And hey, we can use one of your father's rooms. He'll kind of set that up in a way for you to practice, and we can do it there and not in like the castle halls and stuff like that. So just a very nice scene, I thought. That is an aspect of, I think, Harrow that we were able to see that obviously he clearly learned from his father as well. So nice scene there. But Claudia is escorted out as Viren talks to the king. She does sneak back and listen in on this a little bit. So it is discussed at this point. What happened to Kapar? Why has he disappeared? What is going on with him? So it is just sort of addressed that, you know, Viren doesn't seem to know anything about what happened to it, which, especially if you've just watched season 5, is kind of very intriguing. But it makes sense. He's not going to admit that he was responsible for it, but we know he was. That's what happened. No one knows that he's been, you know, spirit kind of put into a coin. That's what's happened to him. But all that's kind of referenced here is that, like, oh yeah, he was working on some sort of a plan or something, but all he seems to have left behind is his weird puzzle house that, like, everyone seems to think is, like, super, super dangerous. But he also said that there is a surprise in there for Claudia and Soren high up in the tower of the puzzle house. And that's obviously the big thing that sparks the whole plot into action is, of course, Claudia listening in and hearing that Kapar, who she gets on really well with, has a surprise for her and her brother in that house. So that's obviously what informs the mission that's about to happen here. But then Atticus gets down to kind of business, more the emotional side of things, and it's just like, how are you yourself doing? Your son was deathly ill. Your mentor mysteriously disappeared, and then your wife left, all one after the other. And he's just like, I'm doing well enough. It's complicated. And he's just kind of like, okay, I won't pry any further, but like you seem to be handling it as best you can here. At this point, again, the guy catches up with Claudia and kind of brings her back, of course. She does run off, though, because she wants to get straight... She runs off again in the other direction. She wants to get going straight away on the whole puzzle house situation. So she goes out to find Soren. She does walk past Callum, and there's a really quick moment here. No, nothing particularly notable here, but we'll come back. Callum will get a moment later on in the book. But she just goes up to Soren and convinces him to come with her. And just part of their kind of usual dynamic, where the kind of odd aspect of Claudia at times, but like Soren and she actually get on quite well together. Again, reminiscent of like a lot of the kind of earlier season stuff, of course, before the kind of family split kind of ended up happening and Soren found like his right path. So at nighttime they head into the puzzle house, basically, and yeah, it's interesting. Like it doesn't look like super kind of crazy. Like you can see it on the front cover here. Is probably like one of the better versions of it. So you can see there's like elements of like a bit of a kind of clock aspect going on to it. It doesn't seem huge, but of course because of the puzzles, it's kind of difficult to navigate. Is sort of the basic idea here. So once they get in here, they just kind of note that, like, what is it? Claudia picks up a lantern. There's a thing written on the bottom which is some things are hidden in the dark, others in the light. Sometimes solutions are hidden in plain sight. And the lantern has a picture of a unicorn on the bottom. And this becomes a kind of important part of the book, is that like Gephardt seemed somewhat obsessed with unicorns, where there's a lot of unicorn imagery or just statues of unicorns all around the place. And it seems to be like one of the main takeaways at the end of the book is something related to unicorns, and I'll get into that when we do get to the end of the book. But the idea here is that this magic, Claudia kind of figures it out immediately. It's a dark light. So once they find the right location, they should be able to use that to sort of reveal more of a hidden path. And this is the thing with sort of like the puzzles. It's Claudia sort of already seems to know the solution to a lot of this stuff, and by the end of the book, it does seem to be this sort of reveal in a way that Claudia and Gephardt got on kind of well enough that like Gephardt almost sets up this whole sequence of kind of stuff, knowing that Claudia will find the puzzle house, come across it, and find what the real kind of like treasure is inside. He seems to have some sort of a faith or kind of trust in Claudia that, in a way, all his research into trying to find out the mystery of what he's been working on, it was never in a way meant for him. It was impossible for him to complete his mission. But Claudia is sort of like destined to do it. And there's some interesting stuff at the end, as we'll kind of get into here. But again, this kind of leads us into kind of one of the first kind of moments where we stop dealing with the puzzles and we just take a break to deal more with the kind of emotional stuff of like Soren asks Claudia basically, what's up with your kind of recent behavior? You're getting into a lot of trouble. You kind of seem to be acting out a little bit. Since Gephardt disappeared and Mom left, you've been acting kind of weird and different. But she just says that she's fine. He does kind of point out that, like, this is the first time you've really talked at length in weeks. You've either just been focusing on your magic or, reading books, and you haven't really spoken to anyone. And there's an interesting kind of point here where like her response to that is to just have like this expression here, where she just kind of looks off into the distance, seemingly not ready yet to kind of reveal her true thoughts. And we'll get that later on in the book. And it's a relatively obvious one, but it is a nice kind of emotional core in the book, even if like it is, again, like I said, separated. The scenes where they directly address this is separated quite heavily as the book goes in. But yeah, there's a bunch of little things, like they find little kind of like levers and stuff like that to activate secret doors in the room, so bits like swing around. Then they end up in the dark room, so Claudia activates the kind of lantern thing, the dark light, and this reveals basically a kind of path on the floor, the lime green path on the floor, which guides them into the kind of next area. And again, a lot of the kind of like handholds, levers that activate this stuff is basically shaped like unicorns. So like what's going on here? What are we building up towards here? And yeah, we're just kind of making our way through. Again, we get kind of similar kind of dynamics here of like Claudia beginning to kind of realize that, he left a surprise here for us. Maybe there's more to it. Maybe it's like the secret to finding out what happened to him and all this sort of stuff. And you get to see here that you the whole her connection to Kapar, which we haven't ever, I think, seen those two characters directly interact, but it is gotten across here that in a way, she, in maybe more recent times especially, has kind of felt more comfortable in a way around Kapar compared to, say, her father, because he seems very open and supportive of Claudia and her magic, whereas Viren just seems to be kind of frustrated and kind of giving out to her over a lot of this sort of stuff. So you could see that she's built up. There's a lot of important people in her life, and now she's lost two of them. Her mother has left just recently. She nearly lost her brother to the illness. In a way, because of the dynamic at the moment, she kind of feels she doesn't quite have a connection with her father. And Kapar is gone. So you can sort of see kind of what she's dealing with here overall. And Soren is just like, you could talk to father about this, but no, he won't help me. He just gets angry. And that's why she is kind of so eager here to continue along this mission and actually find out what happened to Kapar. So it's a kind of interesting dynamic overall. We go through there's a bit of a sequence here where there's like two kind of knights holding spears, and we just have a sequence where they try and go up, they fall through the floor back down to the start. They go in again, they pull one lever, go back down to the start. Both of them pull one each, and then they get through. So, some pretty basic puzzle solving here. And again, this is what takes up about like 6-7 pages, when to me, it's a basic enough puzzle where like you didn't really need to do that. This kind of brings them kind of outside, and they decide that like, okay, what we're going to do is we need to get up into that window that's open. So Soren, you climb up there. He nearly falls. But when he gets up to the top, it seems like he's met with this kind of like creature up there, this kind of beast, and he falls out the window, and it looks like Soren is about to be killed. But this is where Claudia uses the magic spell that turns things that are solid into things that are soft. And so he basically bounces off the rock that he was about to like basically die on. So yeah, he just kind of has a bit of a freak out. And then Claudia figures out there's a puzzle on the wall, so they go in through there. They head up some stairs that are actually on the outside of the building, which is kind of interesting. But when they go in there, they basically find out that the creature was just part of like a kind of carnival ride type thing. And again, there's more puzzle stuff up here. There's a bunch of Kapar's notes where he has obviously constructed this whole thing. Control mechanism, maybe too obvious, but it seems right. Something about like the unicorn horns. One of them's a unicorn, and like you twist the horn. And then another thing about like some of the details here towards the end of the book, there seems to be the kind of schematics for this collar that and some other stuff that's like, it says here, it's not for me, it never was, I'm not worthy to do, hide, scroll, destroy, how to release safely and stuff like that. And there's a few kind of interesting kind of points that you kind of come back to here, highlighting these kind of deeper kind of mysteries going on here. But they activate the kind of carnival ride. Claudia kind of then double activates it. So the floor kind of like opens up, and it reveals a whole kind of secret kind of section of the puzzle house, the kind of basement effectively. So when they head in here, it seems like a kind of empty room. But again, there's some kind of lantern kind of dark light situations going on, and they make their way past some traps and stuff like that into kind of a more interesting room here, where you can see here there's clearly signs of something having gone wrong here. The book doesn't particularly make it clear, but it's almost like, is this where like the Viren Kapar confrontation kind of happened, maybe? Just because it's like, what else would cause such a kind of issue like this to actually happen? Soren is even like, it looks like a fight happened here. You know, spell books are kind of thrown all over the place, and you know she's kind of trying to find out what's going on, and you know there's notes about what is it, letting something free, and like did he find a unicorn? Is that what's going on here? They hear like a noise, and they finally kind of make their way into the kind of, I suppose, true secret room. And the big reveal that we get here is that there is a giant. A giant is being held prisoner in the puzzle house by Kapar. So they just flee at this point. They completely leave because they weren't expecting something like that. But Claudia immediately goes to work researching giants. This is where she figures out like it is a giant. This is also where the scene with Callum happens, in the library, of course. And it's a nice scene. Like, Callum is just kind of like, he can sense as well, like everyone else can, that Claudia is going through quite a lot. And he just says, you know, when I lost my dad, it was hard. I don't want to think about it, but my mom said that we have to grieve, that we should remember everything we love about the people we've lost, keep them there, keep them here, not try to hide from it. It's okay to be sad. And him mentioning this is just like, oh wait, the giant, when we looked at it, it was sad, not like furious or angry or anything like that. It was sad. So what's the situation here? And she just runs, leaving Callum like incredibly confused. She goes to Soren, but at this point, like, Soren's kind of done with the mission. Like, he doesn't want to go back. So Claudia returns on her own. And of course, she makes her way through the puzzle house. She knows the way to go this time. And encounters the giant. So a better look at the giant is here. You can see. So kind of interesting. Some sort of a Earth-style giant, I guess. Because I don't think we've really seen many giants in Xadia in the show so far, like, at all. So pretty new to me as well. So she starts to talk to this kind of a creature here. It can speak. It obviously has a little bit of a kind of like interesting speech pattern where it kind of like makes noises kind of in between the actual kind of English words, basically. And it's noted here, like, she's worried that like it might eat her, but the creature's like, nah, I don't eat people. Like, I eat roots, trees, sometimes rocks, but never people. She kind of notes, you know, do you know what happened to Kapar? You look kind of sad. She gets across like that, you know, she's very devoted to trying to find out what happened to Kapar here. And, you know, she kind of wonders, why would he keep you captive in here? And of course, we get a kind of Xadian approach on humans. Humans always looking for things to use to take power they don't have, they steal. The giant is kind of like, family fine, I hope, but family worried, yes. He mentions that Kapar used a spell on him to put him to sleep, and then brought him here somehow. But then one day, there was a smash, a crash, and Kapar came down the passage. There's lots of glass breaking, fire, anger. Then the magic man comes here, says, have change of heart, says that like the giant will be free soon. So what exactly happened here? But then after that, the giant never saw Kapar again. You know, all he had was like the dripping water from the pipe above to kind of stay alive, basically. So at this point, Claudia decides to, you know, I need to get the collar off you somehow. Doesn't understand why this at all happened. So she mentions, like, does this have something to do with unicorns? They're everywhere. But you know, the giant is just like, unicorn, you look for this? Is that what you want? So she's like, no, I just want to know why Kapar would do this. I want to know what happened to him. We need to get you free. And then, this is the kind of interesting point here. The giant says, wait, perhaps your heart is not darkened. And Claudia's like, thanks, like, I guess. I'm glad I don't have a dark heart. And then the giant's like, you said you saw sadness in me, but I see sadness in you. And this is where Claudia has her kind of big, like, emotional kind of moment in the book. It's like, what? No, it's just everyone is acting so weird and wrong, and everything is broken. Soren was sick, and then Kapar disappeared, and then Soren got better, but Mom and Dad started arguing, and then Mom, she left, and she's on the kind of ground in kind of tears at this point. The giant actually consoles her, which is kind of a interesting moment. Giant words of comfort here for loss. You will find a way like river through rock. So yeah, she takes the collar off at this point as she figures out that the bracelet that she has on is the kind of solution to this. And she mentions that, like, it was shortly before Kapar disappeared that Kapar gave her this kind of snake bracelet, which when you bring the lantern close to the collar around the giant's neck, it reveals snake symbols, basically revealing that, like, the snake bracelet is the key to opening the thing. And this was kind of set up from earlier on in the comic. But just before that, the giant does explain, kind of like, in a way, this is why Kapar wanted the giant, basically. What did Kapar want? Kapar wanted what he could not have. In box is scroll, is map. Map to something important. And this is where it's noted that on the other side of the room is a kind of broken table with a scroll in a box that Kapar doesn't seem to be able to read. The giant is the keeper of the scroll, but there is no key, basically. Only pure of heart may see what is on the scroll. You can, like, see that there's a map inside, like you could see that, like, there is a scroll, but no, unless you're pure of heart, you won't see anything on it. It's even noted that the giant can't see the map himself anymore. So that's an interesting one. Kapar tried many things, potions, asked many questions, and then it says here, maybe is like sound effect is what break him. Puzzle could not solve. So yeah, this seems to be this growing frustration with Kapar that he can't solve this puzzle. The secret is in plain sight, and of course the solution to this being the bracelet kind of highlights a little bit of Kapar's maybe change in approach of realizing that actually that Claudia is actually the kind of the solution to opening this, and that's the whole setup for this whole kind of plot in a way. So at this point, Claudia kind of lets the giant out. The giant kind of smashes open the door. There's no puzzle to solve there, and it's so delighted to kind of see the stars again and be outside. So pretty notable thing. Claudia goes back, grabs the scroll, and she goes to give it to the giant, but the giant is like, the scroll isn't meant for giants. We're only the guards of the scroll. You're still young, little one. Your heart is good. See things others cannot. And she's worried that, what if I can't see the scroll? I've been messing everything up. Everyone's angry at me. What if I'm not kind of good enough? And it's this, she's putting a lot of pressure on herself to be able to see this when she finally looks at it. The giant does note that, no. Most humans, when they see me, only see a monster, but you saw the person in me. Your heart, it will see. So the giant says goodbye. Claudia asks for its name. We get the name, I am Kruha. That's K-R-U-H-A. Find me again someday, Claudia, in a place less dark, as it walks off. Then we cut back, but we do get a final scene here with Viren, who finally, like, he kind of, in a way, bridges the gap between the two of them. He kind of apologizes for being distracted and maybe being too focused on, like, behavior and stuff like that. He gives her back the Kapar spell book that he kind of took away at the start, but so long as you only do the spells in the specifically designated area. There's an emotional moment here. He acknowledges he hasn't quite been there for her, but he will always be here for her, basically. So it's a nice kind of hug scene here. Pretty nice kind of emotional moment, highlighting like the complexity of Viren, especially post season 5, and the fact that Viren is responsible for why Kapar isn't around, but you also understand to a certain degree the kind of importance of the kind of emotion about this scene with his daughter. It's pretty interesting. But anyway, he does note that, like, given how fast you've been learning, I imagine soon I'll be asking you for help. He then spots that she has the scroll right there. So Viren opens it up and looks at the scroll, and it's just like, it's blank. Are you going to be doing something with this? And she lies and is just like, yeah, maybe. And he just says, this is high quality paper. You should do something important with this. So he kind of walks out saying that, we should get you working on the more advanced magic going forward. And then Claudia opens the scroll, only the pure of heart. She opens it and initially nothing, but then she looks back over at it and it's glowing and she can see the map. And this is the final page. Like, there's no elaboration. There's no what Claudia's opinions are on seeing the map. It's just meant to be Claudia is pure of heart. She is worthy to see this. But what's on the map is very, very interesting. So the best shot we get of it here is the top panel there, where you can see there's some landscape stuff. I think that's meant to be water. You can see a tree. You can see meant to be kind of a designation of like forest. And then in the middle of the kind of horseshoe forest area there is clearly a symbol for a unicorn. So it seems to be a map to a unicorn. Now, this is an interesting one because you're kind of like, wait, Claudia has a map to a unicorn, but wait, she may have already used this within the story. Because you go back to, like, what is the most recent example of unicorns being like a plot point in the show? And it is in the kind of flashback of, like, basically the death of the Dragon King, Avazandum. The spell to kill it him involved a unicorn's horn. And when Viren explained where he got the unicorn horn he used from, he mentioned that it was Claudia who was the one who found it. Now, we don't really know the specifics about that scene, and I think they've discussed it because I think it's depicted, I think, in the art book, this scene, but I think they've decided to maybe go in a slightly different direction with this because it's obviously becoming a more relevant active plot point now, and of course, the actual canon material goes against, is put above concept art, basically. So we don't know the true details of what specifically happened here, but because of how rare unicorns are, like keeping in mind that they were the ones who helped humans to learn magic in the first place and were kind of basically betrayed by humans, and they are effectively like extinct in kind of more modern history in the Dragon Prince. The fact that Claudia gets a unicorn, kind of a map seemingly to a unicorn or where unicorns are, is very notable because it's the only solution that I can come up with to like what the reveal is at the end there. But is this what happened here? She used the thing that she was worthy of to get a unicorn, apparently killed it, or maybe just cut its horn off and it's still alive, and has used the horn to as part of a spell to kill the King of the Dragons. And it's speaking, I suppose, to a little bit of the idea of, like, the book is getting across the idea that, like, Claudia, of course, isn't, like, evil at heart. Like, they're getting across the idea that she is pure of heart and she is worthy. But the Claudia we see in the show currently is going down a dark path. Now, we know why she is doing that. It's because of the emotional arc that this book kind of touches on, which is the idea of how she reacts to kind of people leaving her, her losing people close to her. That's and this now with her father is leading her down a quite extreme path, and you're kind of wondering what will drag her back, or is she going to fall even deeper before maybe coming back? That is the interesting point, but it does feel like it's a bit of a weird one where, like, even factoring in all of these details, the only extra thing you think that, like, they maybe could refer back to in, like, say, season 6 is her meeting up with the giant again, Kruha. It seems like that was set up for a reason, that, like, find me again someday. But what reason would Claudia have to go to meet with the giant is probably the greater question. Now, I don't know. Maybe there's a little bit of a connection here to the visuals surrounding this giant and the mushroom mage that we saw at the end of season 5. That's healing Zubeia. Maybe they're from the same kind of general area, and that will lead to some connections happening. Otherwise, it's like it's a book where like the main takeaways are like, okay, it's the emotional arc we know Claudia is going on. They teased some stuff with Kapar about like, you know, almost implying maybe the details of whatever happened with Viren. They obviously established like that he was actually somewhat close to Claudia and set up this whole mission for her to go on to seemingly go the whole way and actually figure out what's in the scroll. But what was Kapar planning to do with a unicorn horn? And like the significance of all of that, given what it seems like Claudia ultimately used the unicorn horn for. Now, there's always the chance that the unicorn horn that was used to kill Avizandum was like some separate encounter, and she still has the map to, let's say, the final unicorn. That would be interesting, because it seems like the unicorn horn is like basically the ultimate kind of magical item in any spell. Now, might it be a way for her to restore her leg or something like that, given what happens in season 5? I'm not overly sure, because it feels like in a way you told us this earlier part of the story, but like all these plots are kind of already resolved, apart from one or two. Like, obviously what we're missing in all of this is pretty much being shown certain exact scenes of like how exactly did whatever confrontation between Viren and Kapar go down that led to Viren deciding, I have to imprison you in a coin. What happened? What was the deal there? I think we know from one of the novelizations that whatever way this confrontation happened, it was over how Viren had planned to save Soren. So obviously there was some disagreement there over something or other. You know, we actually, I don't think, know specifically like what sort of stuff was used by Viren to actually heal Soren in the past. Like, was it maybe a unicorn horn that maybe Kapar had, but he wanted another one or something like that? There's a few details there that would be interesting to get. Definitely. The other thing we don't know about is, of course, you see, yeah, so they're all kind of like related at like very similar times. Maybe the exact specifics of when he cures Soren, Lissa, like they very specifically have not shown Lissa in anything, that she doesn't seem to be involved particularly. So we kind of haven't seen a lot of that stuff. So just little bits and pieces like that are what it feels like we have to kind of get back around to at some point. But are we going to do that in season 6 or 7? When it seems like we also still have to get Arivos out and do a lot of stuff with individual characters. There's open plot threads like all over the place. Or are we just doing more comics? Because I think at this point we don't have another announced comic, so I might need to check some of the San Diego Comic-Con information to see if they said anything at the panel, but I don't believe I heard anything about the next comic, so we actually don't know what the deal is there. And of course the novelizations are quite far behind, where like I think we're already getting the book 3 one soon-ish, if even, so there's some weird stuff going on there. I don't know. I suppose one final point is just specifically with the map. I suppose I'll show the page again. I was looking on the actual map of Zadia to try and maybe figure out if this is a place that we can see, because you can sort of see, like, if we assume the kind of the lines basically is like some sort of a river or water system, then you can sort of see it's like, okay, that shape. And then eventually it goes into a mountainous area. And then just on top of that mountainous area is some sort of a kind of foresty area. The best I could spot on the map was just above the Drakewood and Umber Tor. Like kind of the, what's it called? is this like uncharted forest area on the map? Maybe just in or around there. But because of Unicorn's history, this could easily not be in Zadia. This could be in the human side of the world. But I'm assuming with a magical map, it probably is Zadia. So there's a lot of places, of course, we haven't seen yet. So I don't know. Is it important? Has Claudia already been there and come back? That's the real question here. So a comic that I enjoyed, certainly. I just am a little bit kind of confused about just how significant it is and like what am I meant to read into this versus kind of like other stuff. Kind of a weird one where like where do I even place this compared to like the other comics? Where like they're all very different in so many ways. It's one of those ones where like depending on if they come back to this or we get more kind of details and like plots get completed that relate to this, there's definitely room for stuff to kind of work out and it to go up. My inclination at this point in time is maybe to say that this is perhaps the weakest of the three, but in general they're three very good comics. So this is the weakest of three quite strong comics, and my only concerns are just that like, is it as notable as the other ones in a way? But that could easily change. So they're my thoughts on the comic. If you have the book yourself, definitely let me know what your thoughts are. Definitely when it came to some of the more speculation stuff towards the end there, what are your thoughts on some of the stuff presented here? When it comes to like Claudia the Unicorn, the Kapar and his like faith that he seems to have in Claudia and why he set all this up, and how all those kind of little backstory things that we don't know everything about, how do you think they come together? But that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.